and welcome to Food Neighbourhoods on Monocle Radio. I'm Monica Lillis, and once again we're heading to the places locals love for their food and drink. We're staying hyper-local this week as we wander across the road from Midori House in Marylebone to meet acclaimed chef Angela Hartnett at her latest edition of Cafe Murano. Here, Emma Nelson asks about Hartnett's love for Italian food, the site, and her time working with Gordon Ramsay. Take a listen.
You're going to drink a predominantly Italian wine list, but we do have some fantastic English wines on there as well. Cocktails like Negronis, like Aperol Spritz, like a Frank 75, really simple summer cocktails. And then we have some lovely Italian food. So we have a selection of antipastis where we'll have a beautiful latteria burrata with this lovely agridolce fennel. Then we've got a ragu bianco, which we're going to do with some fantastic pappardelle, tagliatelle with some girolles, then whole sea bream, lovely chicken milanese with a rocket salad, pork chops. You know, simple Italian food, not over exaggerating it. You know, the garnish, lovely protein, and just keep it as it is. Really tasty and really in season.
Your face lit up when you started to talk about the menu. It was lovely. There's clearly a tremendous love for what you do here and for expanding. So tell us what's brought you to Marylebone.
We've always looked at Marylebone. Is it Marylebone? Or is there so many contentions here? We've always looked at this area and we've looked at different sites. And this site came up. It's off the beaten track in the sense it's not on the main drag, I always say. But I like it. It's a busy little area. And in a way, it's like its second neighbourhood of Marylebone, you know, Dorset Street off Chiltern Street. I think it's a great local area. And I think that's where the cafes sit very well. You know, we've got it in St James. But St James is an area. Covent Garden's an area, you know. And I think London more and more has got its local areas now that people stick in and they don't travel. I live east, so I've got my Indian, I've got my British, I've got my you know, you've all got your places. You know, I don't come into the West End for a pizza. I've got a pizzeria next to me, and I think that's what Marylebone's like now. So and we've come here and we're hopefully going to be a great Italian in the local neighbourhood.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the London food scene now. Talking with friends and colleagues for the last year, 2 years or so, people have noticed that if you're in Paris or if you're in Rome, you can go about no more than 10 buildings or even 10 feet, and there will be a decent, freshly cooked, good value local meal that some people are saying is very absent from London at the minute. We all have experiences and it's all rather elevated. Would you agree with that at the moment? Some people think that London's got a little bit too pretentious for its own right.
That's interesting because it's the first time I've heard that. I'd say the London food scene is probably at its best as in the amount of choice in London. I would certainly say if I look at areas, you know, and I suppose if I look at the Italian side, if I look at the canteen that's just opened up in Notting Hill by a friend of mine, Jess, I would say that it's a local restaurant that's great and affordable. I wouldn't say it's pretentious. Or, you know, I look at St John, where I live. That to me, St John Bread and Wine, you know, I go in there all the time. You know, that to me is a local restaurant. I think maybe what they're saying about pretense is what they're saying is more expense. I think London has got expensive. And I don't think it's it's certainly not a restaurateur's fault necessarily. You know, post-COVID, everything's gone up. Post-Brexit, everything's gone up. We're now living in times where, you know, minimum wage is going up every year. You know, national minimum wage has just gone up. Rates have just gone, you know, our rate allowance has just gone up. So, you know, restaurants have to put the prices up. And I remember after COVID, I did a talk and it was with Michel Roux. And he said, there's only so much the restaurant can take. It has to go on the prices. And so I don't think it's London's got pretentious. I think London's just got more expensive. And is it more expensive or is it actually what restaurants should be charging? And there's your argument, you know, whereas I think, God, years ago, it was a really basic sum. If my brother, who's an economist, will probably laugh at me for saying it, but it was like you took your 100%, you did 25% on your rent and your rates, you did 25% on your bills, what you paid for everything, all your produce, etc., etc. You did 25% on your staff costs and you made 25% profit. I can tell you now that equation does not tally. You know, you're probably going 35 on your staff now. You know, your rents have gone up, and where it's all hit is your profit margin. So you're no longer taking that 25%. You're probably down 10 if you're lucky. You know, and every time something changes, it hits the bottom line. So where can you go? You have to put your prices up. And I'm very loath, as all my management will tell me, about putting prices up. But even we've gone, and when I think now we're charging 20 quid for a bowl of pasta, that sits with me, not uncomfortably, because it's what it should be, but I just want still people to feel, actually, I still thought it was worth the money and I had a great time. So you have to deliver.
You belong to that generation of the great beasts of the London cookery scene. And just tell us what that was like. What did you learn from that period, apart from to have the thickest skin in London?
Well, one thing I've always said, and it's not learning from that, is just that food's food, at the end of the day. Let's keep it in perspective. It is a business, you want to get it right, but Christ alive, if you're going to have a cardiac arrest over a carrot, you've got to really rethink your life, I think. Secondly, I think consistency and standards. That's the thing I've always learned, If you start sending stuff out that's substandard, just get out of the kitchen. Or if you think it doesn't matter that the service, we didn't hit it, that might... things go wrong, don't misunderstand me. Mistakes happen, things go wrong. But you've got to recognise that. If you don't recognise it and acknowledge it, then you shouldn't be in the business. And the one thing I always learnt from all those sort of people is, first table is important as the last table. No one's more important, and you just got to look after your guests. Look after your team, look after your guests.
Let's talk about food. We started off talking about food. Where was the fire first lit for Angela Hartnett?
I suppose years ago when I was younger, I worked for my grandparents and uncles and aunts in their restaurants. They all own fish and chip shops. I loved working in it. I was good at cooking when I was a kid. I was good at cooking with my grandmother, and I liked doing it. And that's where I always thought, let's have a restaurant. That's what I always thought I'd do, just own a business, because it seemed quite easy then that all my family owned businesses, so I can own a business. Never really thought much of it. And then I suppose I did work in Cambridge. I worked abroad for a bit, and it wasn't until I came to London, I started working for Gordon, that I realised there was a whole other scene to what catering was, and also that was on the great time to be at the cusp of it. Gordon was coming up. You had the likes of the Square. You'd had Marco, you had Phil Howard. All these great restaurants were there. You had Simon Hopkins. All that, Jeremy Lee. Alistair Little, all of that sort of Soho in the 80s, 90s and stuff. It was fantastic. And that's when I think food really started to open up in London, certainly in London, and now it's gone far and wide in the whole of the UK. So I think that's what really thought, I want to be part of this sort of business.
The Murano name is associated with you, and the fact that you have your absolute high-level restaurants in Mayfair, and now you're opening up around London. How do you make sure the values that you've got in Mayfair are going to pop up in Marylebone this summer and autumn and for the foreseeable?
It's hard. It's not easy. As soon as you start expanding, you don't dilute, but what you do is you are expanding your brand. So you've got to make sure you've got the people around you who believe in your values, respect what you do, and will deliver them. I can't be here 24/7. The idea isn't that I'm at the cafes. The idea is that I'm at Murano and Limewood and stuff. So the cafes have to take care of themselves, and you make it that it's they should be able to do that. So you put a good manager in place. You've got a senior team who oversee the kitchen, who oversee everything, and it's for them to deliver, and you give them the power to do it.
Food Neighbourhoods is a Monocle production from the team behind the menu. This episode was written and recorded by Emma Nelson and edited by Flynn Simons. For more food and drink stories, you can tune into the menu every Friday at 2000 London time. I'm Monica Lillis. Thanks for listening.